Go
ahead.
Evening, guys. Another one from me and Sean this evening. The Culture and Justice Reform podcast. This evening, we've got Jeffrey Ketland and Claire Best with us, two future interviewees who have very kindly agreed to come back for our 9th podcast. And I hope that you enjoy what we're going to discuss. Jeffrey, we'll start with you. If you can give us a little bit of your background, as we always do, and then we'll move on to Claire, and you can, and then we'll move on to the wider discussion.
Okay, well, I'm an academic. My work currently at the University of Warsaw, although I live in Edinburgh. And I have a story which I related to Sean a couple of weeks ago, which is in 2 long parts. First part, I was stalked by a woman who assaulted me, threatened me, harassed me, stalked me. It's like Fatal Attraction, you've seen the movie. And then after, she tragically committed suicide. And then after that, I was pursued by mad militant feminist vigilantes who pursued me, chased me out of my job. And before that, I've just been an academic, a professional philosopher and logician for about 30 years. So that's it.
Welcome, Jeffrey. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes. Hello. So I'm British, but I live in Los Angeles, and I have a film and television agency. My background is in documentary film production, and as a result, I'm looking at a high-profile campus criminal sexual assault trial, which I discussed a few weeks ago. I uncovered a whole lot of disturbing things going on behind the Me Too movement and also the campus sexual assault stories.
Okay. Okay, well, we're talking a few moments ago before we actually came on film about a topic that is quite relevant. If you could begin with that, and then we'll go forward from there.
Yes. So the first thing that I read this morning was that Virginia Giuffre had taken away her accusations against Alan Dershowitz. Virginia Giuffre was one of the Epstein victims who accused Prince Andrew, and Prince Andrew ended up paying, I think it was £10 million or so. And then, she accused Alan Dershowitz before that, and that was in litigation. And she came out today and said that she might have had a false memory, it might not have happened. Behind the scenes of that, I can't tell you exactly what's going on, but my suspicion and what I have been told is that there were victims' rights advocacy groups who were behind her accusation against Alan Dershowitz. And that leads me to my second thing, which is about the Hunting Ground documentary, which is a 2015 Sundance Film Festival documentary about campus rape on American campuses. And over the years, that documentary slowly got debunked. There was a woman in the middle of it who was nicknamed Mattress Girl, who led a demonstration at Columbia University against her alleged rapist, a German guy, who eventually turned around and sued Columbia and for not protecting his rights, and they settled out of court, but essentially he won. And there are other stories in the Hunting Ground that are false. But I looked into the financing of the Hunting Ground, and it took me basically all the way to Stanford University and the White House, and people who are tied very closely into the Not Alone 2014 campaign that the head of which, well, Obama introduced it, but the head of it was Valerie Jarrett.
Mm-hmm.
And there were all of these nonprofits tied to this that were supporting these narratives, in my opinion, willingly not fact-checking, willingly creating defamatory, very dangerous narratives that created witch hunts. And they had partnerships with social media, with journalists. We're talking to lobbyists, to lawmakers, and this basically created this wave, an uptick of these false accusations and people being, criminalized and put on sex offender registries, sometimes with little to no evidence. And so that sort of leads me here to wanting to talk with Jeffrey, because I heard Jeffrey's story in the UK. And as I had mentioned on the previous podcast, I think that the UK and the US and Australia as well, and Canada, but particularly the UK and the US have a combined scheme going on, and it's dangerous.
Do you believe that, Jeffrey? Is that something that you enter into? Yeah.
No, well, yes, well, and no. But what is really happening is the rise of militant feminism. So in 1965, if you'd said to John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Jimmy Page, you're going to get arrested for what you just did with the groupie. No way are they going to get arrested. In 1975, they may have heard about these groups, but they still couldn't do it. Okay, but they existed. Okay, so the Refuge was created by Erin Pizzey in 1971. None of these organizations existed in 1965. 150,000 of them existed in 1975. They took control of every university in the Anglosphere, every single one. They had women's studies degrees, women's studies departments. They had set up all of these activist groups, women's activist groups, domestic violence groups. They began publishing a vast literature, created hundreds of journals, specialized journals. You can read, they're all around. You can just read them. The Journal of Violence Against Women, the Journal of Women's Subjection to Violence, hundreds of them. That didn't exist in 1965, but it did exist in 1975. But it took about 30 years. It took about 30 years to filter out into everything. And then it filtered out into everything, supported by the Obama administration via the Dear Colleague letter, famously in 2011, supported by the Director of Public Prosecutions in the UK, right about 2007, 8, 9. That's Keir Starmer, the Jimmy Savile scandal of 2012. It just exploded everywhere. Social media caused it, but it's been around for decades. And I'm not sure whether it's top down or bottom up, because a huge number of these organizations are just regular activists who got together in various ways and created this gigantic system of witch hunting and accusations. So that's my theory of it. It comes from political activism from the early 70s, and that's my theory.
Okay, interesting.
Go on, Emma.
I was just going to say, we can't take away from the fact that terrible things have happened. Really terrible things have happened, and the reasons why these forces have come to be is to protect women. I agree wholeheartedly that there has been an overbalance. That the pipe glass is filled up and it's spilling over, and now all this lunacy is coming about. But historically, there's been a build up to the point that we're at now. Should we put blame on what's happened historically for where we are now, or is it just a new reign of people, individuals who are coming in and taking over the reins and taking it further? I don't understand.
I'd like to answer that, which is yes, it is a build-up, but I think what happened is between 2009 and 2011, when the Dear Colleague letter was introduced, there were things put in place to basically make money off it. And, so the Dear Colleague letter was introduced in New Hampshire on Monday, April 4th, 2011.
What's the Dear Colleague letter? What was
Dear
that?
Colleague letter is an unregulated, meaning it didn't go through the regulatory process where people comment and so forth. It is an unregulated directive that Vice President Joe Biden introduced at the University of New Hampshire that was given to every college and I'm not sure if it was given to schools at that point, but certainly to every college and university in the nation, which is pretty much everywhere, that receives federal funding. and it was a directive to them on how they had to handle sex discrimination, Title IX.
Same as in the
Yeah,
UK.
so in America, they have a completely different system. They have the Office of Civil Rights,
Yes.
and they have a series of forms of important legislation called Title I, Title II, up to Title IX, and more. And this is connected to civil rights legislation in the US. And originally, it was actually about sports. So we're now seeing the trans turf stuff with a lot of karma happening. So this sports legislation was about women's participation in sports. Colleges cannot discriminate against women in sports. That's how it originally started. And then you have this Title IX thing gradually turned into a sexual discrimination and how to deal with rape on campus rape. Now, of course, in the UK, none of this exists. It just doesn't exist, and it would be considered.
I have a list in my possession that gave Malson Saunders that was sent to me via my MP, which I addressed her and asked her directly if she had sent a memo out to all of the police, police in the UK, tell them to believe the victim. And she answers me in great detail, and she gives graphic responses as to why that directive was given, and that's what we that ties in directly.
That's true. So that's but for the most part, the mainstream police officer in the United States probably thinks this is the average police officer in Texas or Wisconsin does not believe this crap. But all of the Title IX officers in universities, in campuses in the US believe this crap. And they also have police officers in the universities in the US. There are no police officers in British universities. The idea is, what? They have a police officer in the university? American schools have people protecting the kids from being shot with machine guns. That's how crazy this is. But none of this exists in the UK. You do have the secret policies related to harassment and stuff, but in the US, this is gigantic. It's a very big issue, and like Claire says, this was really turned into a huge issue during the Obama administration with Joe Biden, and that was all. The Dear Colleague letter is basically saying, believe women, you have to take serious measures against accused people. And then serious measures have to be taken because in America you have private colleges like Princeton. They've just got a bucket full of money pouring into their coffers every day. And then you have federal colleges and they depend on their federal funding. So the threat was, if you don't take severe draconian action against these accused individuals, we'll remove your funding.
Yeah. But it definitely was a business, and that's what I've just discovered. So Joe Biden introduced this Title IX directive on Monday, April 4th, 2011. On Friday, April the 1st, 2011, so 3 days before, this guy called Brett Socolow launched two charities, two nonprofits. One was called the Association of Title IX Coordinators, and the other one, I can't remember the exact name, but essentially it was a training for behavior on campuses and dealing with it. And so this guy, Brett Socolow, has actually just been sued in a whistleblower suit